Welcome to Life Lessons with Dr. Cunningham, where who you are matters more than what you do. This channel features high level professionals who share their lived experiences and lessons learned. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I would like to welcome to the discussion Dr. Danny Moy.
Hi.
And just to share a little bit about Dr. Danny, she is a clinical leader, social justice advocate, cultural empowerment coach, national public speaker, and passionate psychotherapist. With over 10 years of mental health experience, she has become a highly recommended expert in racial trauma, couple therapy, family therapy, and personal development. Driven by her own story of triumph, Dr. Danny believes that your past victories serve as constant reminders of your ability to thrive. From motivating women to develop a different relationship with their emotions to challenging families to rediscover their strengths, Dr. Danny is always curious about the power of change within a relational context. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Danny.
Thank
And how
you.
about if we get started first with just how we met and how we're connected?
Yes. So I believe that I learned of you, I think first through the CTAMFT one time you were on the board. And I was like, oh my God, it's a woman who looks like me on the board of
Yes.
and then I was going to Nova Southeastern for my doctorate, and I
Mhm.
ran into Alicia Bosley, and she told me that she went to the program at Antioch, and your name came up again. I was like, oh wow. So I think we met by way of just crossing paths within the industry, within marriage and family therapy, as two women of color who are really shifting the narrative as it
Mhm.
pertains to mental health.
Mhm. Most definitely. And I'm so glad that we were connected, in those ways. And even now, you're a part of CTAMFT. Are you not
Yep,
on the executive board?
I
What's your position again?
am. So in January, I will be the chair.
Yes. When I saw that, I said, that needs to be celebrated. And I need to make sure we highlight that point. And I was so glad to see you, on the board, as well as to be the chair, one of the chairs. And so, congratulations to you. And I
Thank
know it's going to be a great term.
Yes, I'm looking forward to
Being
it.
a part of the lead, yes. And so how about if we share, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your ethnicity and upbringing, just to give us a holistic viewpoint of what has led you to who you are now.
Absolutely. So I identify as British Caribbean American. My mother is African American with roots from the South, Alabama to be specific. Um,
Yes, I have family from there too.
oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
Gordo.
What
My dad's side.
county?
Yes, that's
Okay,
awesome.
we're Henry County. So, but
Mhm.
the town that they live in now is Abbeville. It's very small, very small.
Mhm.
So in my dad's side, my father's British, and both of his parents are Jamaican. So, my father was born in England. My paternal grandparents were born in Jamaica. Um, and so I try to bring all of that into who I am. Sometimes people who see me on social media might see me dancing, singing, like just doing all types of cultural things that really brings it all together. Um,
Mhm.
so I have a love for soca music, reggae, but my upbringing was mostly within the Southern culture. So there's a lot of gospel there, a lot of Motown, a lot of
Mhm.
the good music. So it's a
Great
mixture
music.
of everything.
Definitely. I agree with that. So Commodores and
Oh yeah, yeah.
great music. Great music. And so, if I'm able to ask you, because I know we're going to go to the fun questions later, but if I'm able to ask you now about being a marriage and family therapist, and how did you decide to go into that profession?
Yeah, I think for me, so when I was an undergrad, I started out as a communications major, and I was kind of like looking into like the whole journalism thing. But then some of my classes crossed over with gender studies. And I ended up having classes in like, women, literature, and society, or just a mixture of things, sexuality and gender. And so that introduced me to psychology. So all three of these different industries were like intertwined in the gender studies program, like communications, mental health, psychology, sociology. So I was like, well, I think I'm gonna have like a minor, right, in psychology, sociology. And after that, I was like, well, what do I do with this? Because everybody knows that you can't just do one of those without having kind of like an after plan, like where is this leading? And so I looked into social work, I looked into marriage and family therapy, psychology, and I found the systems approach to be the most interesting one. Um, it really stood out to me, just understanding how, you know, that core component of your family of origin, how that can influence, or how your contextual truth can influence the trajectory of your life, your relationships, and all those things. I was like, this is different. So.
Mhm. Now, if I'm able to ask you about kind of the process, I mean, because of knowing the program and Central Connecticut being a program that we, both attended, and having an opportunity to really focus on family of origin, in our own experiences, how did that help to, or what did that unfold, and how did that help you to even, show up as a great marriage and family therapist that I know that you are, and a lot of people know you are.
Mhm. I think for me, I kind of developed this idea. I have a colleague in the field. She's, I think, a social worker, but she's also one of my sorors. And one thing that she says is therapy as a lifestyle. So I took it upon myself to try to, the very things that we learned and that we are trying to journey with clients through, how can I apply this as well to my life so that I'm not only walking the walk, but I'm also talking the talk. And um, I think it made it more personal for me. And so then it became like a part of like my identity, just wanting to pour my heart into what I do. Um, and that's where I would say it stemmed from.
Okay, great, great. And then, so what led you to decide to take the journey of going to a doctoral program?
I
I mean,
know.
because the master's program, especially the one that we attended, it already
Very
does
rigorous. Yeah.
produce excellent therapists.
Mhm,
But to
mhm.
decide to go to an advanced level, nuanced clinical, as well as, the teaching, research, supervision, and all the training that we receive in those regards, like, what led you to decide to do that? And what was that journey like for you?
Mhm. So I think I got curious when we were like ending the program, when I was coming to my capstone. And I said, I think I really want to look more into, beyond the couch, right? So what else, in which other ways can I contribute to this field? And so I was like, wow, when you look at like the history of psychology or the root of systemic therapy, it's a lot of white men that started some of these things and developed these theoretical concepts. And even some of the tests that we take today to become licensed are developed by predominantly white people. And so I said, I need to find a way to take up some space as a woman of color, because if we're not in there, they could be missing things in research, they could be missing things in literature. Um, the voice within, different journals could be perpetuated by one culture and missing another. So I was like, I really want to get more into it,
Mhm, mhm.
beyond the couch. And so that's what interested me.
That's great. I mean, and the thing about it is, it's definitely a great accomplishment in and of itself when you're talking about 1.2% of the United States,
Right.
has produced doctorates. But
Mhm.
then of that 1.2%, only 16% are minority.
Very
So
true.
then to be 16% of 1.2%,
Right.
that's not a lot of individuals. At the same time, and to consider even the statistics around who completes it, the doctoral program, because you have a number that will enter, but only about 56% actually complete the programs,
Right.
to become doctorates. And, the rest are, as we already know, are ABDs. And we're always like, don't become the ABD, like,
Right.
don't be the all but
That's not
dissertation,
that's not a badge
literally,
of
right?
honor.
And so, what is it that helped you to push beyond the, uh, you know, qualifying exams, to get through the dissertation, to make it through the rigorous process of becoming a doctor.
Right. I think for me, like it goes deeper than like what meets the eye. I think because I know where I'm coming from and the expectations that come with being the next generation to kind of push things forward within a family system and what that can mean, um, I took it very seriously, that task. And I was like, if I've obtained access into this space, I cannot take it for granted. Even with the imposter syndrome and everything else, coming my way, I was like, I have to finish this. I have to do that.
Mhm.
And then I reflect on just, just the long line of strong women that have been a part of my journey, um, and knowing that I wanted to continue that legacy.
Mhm. And who are some of those people that have influenced you? I think that's a.
Yeah, so one would be actually most recently she passed away. My pastor from childhood. She's actually the first and only person I told at one point that I wanted to become a doctor. In the sixth grade, I had already like decided I wanted a PhD and I was going to do this, and I wanted to be a writer. Um, and so she helped me kind of not only speak those things into existence, but develop some skills too, So I went to an all girls Christian school and she was the principal. So
Okay,
we
great.
developed a close bond. So she's one. And then I would say, like, my grandmother, um, she grew up in Alabama during like the during the Jim Crow era where it was just still a lot of segregation.
Mhm.
And I remember her telling me a story of having to leave school in the second grade to help out with sharecropping. Um, and I was just like, wow, it wasn't really an opportunity to be a child or to enjoy playing or doing those things. You had to walk away from that in order to, help the family. And so
Mhm.
I don't take that lightly being the only grandchild.
Understood, understood. And the part that I'm wondering, what is it that learned from them, or what did they share with you as far as life lessons, or maybe even
Yeah.
particular principles that helped you to be able to navigate to where you are today?
I think just knowing that, anything that you put your mind to and put your faith in, and trust God for, that you can accomplish. Um, and then also just the whole idea of being mindful of who you surround yourself by, right? Because if people are surrounding us and they're speaking life into us, that pays off eventually, you know? It's a lot of things that we have to deal with in life. And so it helps to have a few good people in your corner who really want to see you win and succeed. So I think that those are some of the main ones that stick out to me.
Mm. Maybe having a particular vision for their life, or a
Mhm.
dream for their life, but knowing that it's not just a matter of having the vision itself, but what environment you surround it in order to nurture it, in order to cultivate it, in order to see it move forward and to grow. And so I think that's awesome what you're sharing. And if I may ask you, is there a particular point in time, or a story that you'd like to share regarding like one of the greatest life lessons that you have learned?
Mhm. So I feel as though one of the greatest ones that I have learned is to, not be afraid to be set apart, um, to not be afraid to do what you need to do to align yourself with the things that you would like to see come to fruition in your life. Sometimes you have to separate yourself, or sometimes you have to be more patient in certain seasons, and learning to shift your cells accordingly, so to speak, I think is helpful. Uh, because, life is unpredictable. But sometimes when you have those tools, right, you learn how to pivot and you still remain on track with your goals.
That's it. That's it. It definitely been watching a lot, and even within my own ministry, my pastor is actually a female as well. She's been talking a lot
Oh,
about pivoting. And
wow.
also Dr. Cindy Trim talked a lot about that. But it's a great topic of discussion that really focuses a lot on what it means to remain true with regards to your foundation, but also still have a level of adaptability.
Yes.
So that it's kind of the nuances of balancing the two, to
Mhm.
remain true and rooted and grounded with regards to, well, I call them, principles, even though I think that we have a similar belief system, but I don't want to assume. So I'm going to ask you, what is your belief system and how would you like to define that?
So I believe personally, I grew up in a Christian home. So a lot of my foundation is still grounded in Christianity, believing that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior of my life, and just aligning myself right with like-minded people on various levels in my professional life, my personal life, that keep me grounded to faith. That's very helpful, especially as a therapist.
Mhm.
So um, that's how I connect spiritually.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And and I like the if I were to connect the two ideas of the belief system with consideration of being a Christian, but then also the idea of the foundation, but then also still having adaptability, is that everyone can show up in their own way of an expression of it,
Yeah.
but there's still that foundation of Christ and
Mhm.
following particular principles.
Yeah.
So, for example, I may focus on peace or love, but
Right.
someone else may focus on the attributes of manifestation and miracles, or things of that nature.
Mhm.
um, or just the fact that he was a very disciplined gentleman, right?
Yeah.
Because he was a carpenter and then utilized that sort of foundation with regards to how he was brought up to determine what he did later on in his life. The reason why I think it's interesting too, because I can kind of flow with regards to belief system, but then also marriage and family therapy and things of that nature too. But I was recently reading a book about Jesus was a feminist.
Mm,
And I found that so interesting because I know you were talking about like gender studies, and
yep.
then you start talking about like, family and consideration of relationships. And I was
Mhm.
reading something about, a particular philosophy that's like building up to the, discussion of Jesus and how he was of, a feminist perspective. But
Mhm.
even with consideration of prior to that, there was something that was philosophy called Stoicism,
Mhm.
and it was literally, I believe, created through the Greeks, where they focused on um, the fact that women were at the forefront of being able to have influence and power, because during those times prior to Christ's time, it was kind of a day where women really weren't considered at the forefront. They
Right.
really weren't able to be heirs, or they weren't considered the one in the seat of power. However, with consideration of this particular belief system, they were at the forefront of not only philosophy and also being able to have writings,
Mhm.
even if maybe their names weren't necessarily at the forefront, like the way we're able to have our names at the forefront now.
Mhm.
But it also focused on particular values or virtues like self-control, but then also consideration of things like the importance of a strong connection within a relationship or marriage that's based on spiritual equality. And I thought that those ideas were kind of cool and different, because it wasn't like the norm
Mhm.
of those times, where it's kind of like the woman had this walk behind the man like two steps behind, where it's a different conversation to say a woman is able to express her authority and power just like equally to her partner. And I was like, wow, that's kind of awesome
Yeah.
you know So fun speed questions, Dr. Danny. So we're going to start with the first one. What's your favorite song or artist?
My favorite artist is Michael Jackson. And what is my favorite song? That's a really good question. Um, I love the artist Janae Aiko, and I will say currently my song is While We're Young. It just focuses on love and things flowing organically and just not caring about the anxieties that come with that. So
Now, what's your favorite book or author?
my favorite book is Vibrate Higher Daily by Delia. Oh, is it Delia? I forget her last name. But it's all about learning to ground yourself and learning how to, I guess, just vibrate at a healthy frequency, and knowing when your body is off and when your spirit is off, and being attentive to that, um, and doing the self-care that's needed. So
And what's your favorite series, movie, or actor?
This Is Us. I love that show. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
I am.
I know it's so funny that as a therapist, I want to watch a show about a family. um, but I love that show. I love the dynamics. I love how they work through things together. I love that they're authentic, and they let pain, come to the surface, and they deal with it as a family. But I really love that show a lot. That's my favorite.
Now, how about your favorite way to de-stress?
So for me, music is like my go-to. So the best way for me to de-stress, especially like after work and dealing with a lot of clients, oftentimes just sitting in my car listening to my favorite playlists. But music is very healing for me.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Between
consider music to be a universal language. I definitely agree
Yeah,
with them. I agree.
definitely.
So,
Mhm.
what's your favorite quote?
So my favorite quote is, and it says, "Until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter." And so that reminds me of the role that I play as a marriage and family therapist, but not only as a marriage and family therapist, but as a woman of color in higher education. Um, and just the fact that, once we are given those opportunities, to sort of move forward or shift things forward within our culture, um, then I think that we should take that role seriously and embrace it.
Mhm.
Um, but it also talks about how, in the past, because we weren't given that space to have a voice, how that, prevented a lot of our truth to come to the surface. So now, um, I just hope that more people will join us, whether it's in our field or other industries where we need to take up more space.
Yeah. So, if I can ask you, what is it? What truth is it that you would like to see move forward, or to be, become a dominant discourse based on what you share?
Mm, I think I would just like it to be understood that you can still have an adequate level of faith while accessing resources, whether that's a mental health counselor, a specific healer or nutritionist, or whoever it is going to help get your life on balance. It's okay to still be grounded in your faith and to utilize resources. Um, and I always tell people you can actually pray for somebody to come into your path that's, right for you. But whatever it's going to take on that path of healing, to prioritize yourself.
Mhm. Okay, so where is your favorite place that you've traveled?
My favorite place,
Mhm.
I would have to say Mexico. Yes.
And then what's one thing that you'd like to do that you have not done?
Learn how to swim.
Really?
Yes, it's a thing. Mhm.
Now I'm wondering, where can people connect with you?
Yes. So you can connect with me online at Dr. Danny Moy on Instagram, or Harmony Cove Therapy, which is also on Instagram, but also Facebook, um, or my website, harmonycovetherapy.com.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we certainly hope that you enjoyed. And don't hesitate to look up Dr. Danny Moy. And also, you can always find me on my website, www.necllc.website. And you have a great one.